Now, that's the heavens and the earth. Now there's raw. The pink energy is raw. So it also infects Gaia and Uranus. And so Gaia and Uranus also began to begat further sentient beings. Okay. And from there, we've got the Titans, we've got the Cyclops, we've got the Hecatonathers, we've got the Giants. Okay. But since the emotion is raw, okay, the pink energy is raw. It doesn't have a direction. It doesn't have a sentience. Okay. It is this raw energy. It also not only did it cause the passion that created all the beings, but it also created jealousy. Because up to this point, Uranus had complete 100% of the attention that Gaia was able to give. Okay? Because Gaia had nothing else to focus her energy on. Now she does. Okay? She has children. Uranus became jealous. So Uranus opened up Tartarus, the deepest of the hells, and tossed all of his children into Tartarus. The Cyclops, the Hecatonathers, the Giants, and the Titans. Okay? But unbeknownst to him, Gaia had kept one of his children hidden, the god of time, or the titan of time, Kronos, who in Norse mythology would be referred to as Odin. Now, Odin, Kronos, his weapon is a, is a sickle, okay? And he severed the connection between Uranus and Gaia, sending Uranus flying off into space. So now the sky is much, much farther away than it ever was. Okay. And when he did so, he also opened up Tartarus and brought forth the beings that his father had imprisoned within. Now, the pink energy is still raw and and unfocused, but the piece that had been severed by Kronos fell into the sea. Okay, it fell from the sky into the sea and frothed. Okay, as it fell and fell to the bottom of the ocean. During that time, the Titans had another generation of children. Okay, the Olympians in Greek mythology. They, I'm not sure that they really have a group name in other mythologies. That's why I choose to use the Greek because it's simplest to explain. But from that is born Zeus, Hera, Hestia, Poseidon, and Hades. Okay. In Nordic mythology, Thor is Zeus. Okay. And you can insert your ethnic background on every one of these. It's still it's still the case. Okay. Now, because the pink energy still is not focused and concentrated into an individual, Kronos is still subject to the same raw energy that his predecessor was, that his father was. Okay? So he again locks away all his children. But Rhea, like her own mother, Gaia, keeps one of her children hidden and gives Kronos a rock, and he locks the rock away. How does he not know a rock is not his son? Well, she's a titan. She's a god. So she makes the rock is animated. It's a golem. Okay, so he believes that this golem is his son. Okay, so the golem is locked away instead. Now, Zeus, yes, well, he doesn't actually eat his children. That is a modern take on it to make it more gruesome. That is not actually what happens. They lock them away, okay, so that they cannot. Anyway, so so Zeus rescues his two brothers, and when he does so, and then the three of them kill Kronos, stop him anyway, and rescue the other three. They do, and then uh, so now the next generation has begun. Now we have the Olympians, okay, and then the elves join them, and we get Freya. I mean, the they fight against the elves, the elven gods, but some of them switch sides and join the Olympians or the Asgardians, if you want, if you're looking Norse. And so now Freya and Frey have joined on their side, and we eventually have 12 prime deities. Okay, technically 13. All right, now during this time, the frothing finally stops. Frothing in the ocean finally stops. All right. And when the frothing stops, a woman steps out of the waves. The most beautiful woman in the world. Right? The now the three muses are the first people to come across her, and they pledge their loyalty to her. They are the three graces, as they are called. Okay, Thalia, uh, Penelope, and Delia. I'm drawing a blank on the last one. But they are the three graces, and they pledge their allegiance because they can feel the power of this new lady who has just been born. Okay, she was just born. Now, obviously, she's been around for a long time, right? But she was just born, so she's a newborn babe. So they tell her they all about the Olympians, okay, and they tell her about the Titans, and they bring her up to speed as much as they can. Now, all the other Olympians, they all feel her presence suddenly on the world, all of them. So they appear, okay? Zeus, Hera, Hestia, Artemis, who is Freya, Apollo, who is Frey. The last one to arrive, of course, is the blacksmith. He shows up at the very, very end. But they all appear, okay? And they can feel the power coming from this young newborn goddess, all right? And all the men, except for Zeus, are falling over themselves. And of course, Hephaestus has not arrived yet, okay? He's still on his way, okay? Because he was working, okay? He's gonna come, he'll be there, but he's not there yet. So, but they're all falling over themselves to try to get her attention. And all the women are like, whoa, you know, what's going on here? Okay. And despite what modern mythology would have you believe, Zeus does not, you know, the fact that he doesn't fall over himself with lust goes against everything that modern mythology says about it because he doesn't. He looks at her and he knows, hey, this woman is super powerful. Okay. And yeah, okay, so she's she's gorgeous, but you know what? Um, I'm going to adopt her as my daughter. Okay. He doesn't try to, like all the other guys, he doesn't try to get into her pants. He says, I'm going to adopt her as my daughter. So he tells everyone, okay, she's my daughter now. All right. And he tells her, I'm taking you under my wing as my daughter. Okay. And he is the king of the gods, so he has that ability. Now, she is a newborn. Regardless of her level of power, she doesn't really know what's going on in the world yet. Okay. And she has already been taught by the three graces that king of the gods, that Zeus is the king of the gods here. He makes all the rules. Okay. And so she doesn't really know that if she has a choice or not. So she says, okay, you know. And he goes, as the king of the gods and your father. I'm going, and he doesn't want. He looks around at all the guys, that are vying for her attention. Says, "I don't want a war of the gods to start. You know, she could be, she would be the trigger to start a war of the gods, either between the men and the women, between the men and each other, whatever's going to happen. She's going to be the trigger to a new war." So he says, he goes, "As your father, I'm going to marry you off. And then that means that you are married." And she says, "Okay." And, you know, she's looking at Aries because Aries is, holds some attraction to her. Okay. But at this point, Hephaestus shows up. And Zeus just offhandedly says, "Him, he's your new husband." So Hephaestus didn't get a chance to uh to even say anything, and Aphrodite is like, didn't get a chance to say anything, but now they're married. Okay. So, but she is extremely gorgeous, and so Hephaestus is like, "Wow, okay, I just got married to the most beautiful woman in the world. Crazy. What the heck happened?" So he, the gods disperse, and she goes back to his forge with him. Now she's married to him. But the goddess of love, in a loveless marriage, locked in a forge for eternity. That's also crazy. So now every day, Aries is show Aries is now showing up to the forge, and Hephaestus is like, "I noticed you showing up to the forge every day. What's up with that?" He goes, he says, "Your weapons are good, and soldiers need weapons." So Hephaestus is like, "Well, yeah, all right, cool." And but so one of these times when Aries is there, and he's has distracted Hephaestus. All good. Have a seat. Aphrodite slips out the back door. All right, and she goes down to the beach where she first arrived, and the Graces meet her, and they apologize to her for what has happened, and she goes, "It's all good." and she says, and they ask if her husband will be joining her. She goes, "I don't need my husband here to have fun." And so she now she starts her adventures. So she goes to every place across the world and learns things. And each time she arrives someplace, she transforms, because she's a god, into her appearance, into what the locals need her to look like. When she visits the dwarves, she becomes a dwarf. When she visits the elves, she becomes an elf. When she visits the dark elves, she becomes a dark elf. When she visits Mesopotamia, she becomes a Mesopotamian. She has many, many names. In each of the places she goes, and she learns new things and acquires new skills, she gains a new name. Okay. Now, although you may all know her as Aphrodite, that is not her only name. Okay. She has, in each of the places she goes to, she gets a new name. Okay. You may recognize some some of her other names. One of the names that she has is Lilith. Okay. One of the names that she has is Inanna. One of the names she has is Astarte. Okay. One of the names she has is Urania. Okay. You also might now in Egypt. No, see, Isis is Hera. In Egypt, she is Bast. Okay. But not only is she Bast, she's also Sekhme. Okay. All right. Does anyone know who Sekhme is? Sekhme is the lion god. Okay. So she's the cat god and the lion god. Okay. Yep. Usually doesn't have an H on it, but yes. Yes, of course. You know. Um, but you know, also, if you got to remember, that's right, Hathor, because Hathor, you are correct. You are correct. Hathor is also Sekhme, in case you didn't know. Okay, they are all the same person. And as far as your Isis comment, and some people also believed that Hera was also Aphrodite, but that is accurate. Okay, all right. They combined in some cultures. They combined Aphrodite and Hera into the same being. But you can worship two gods, and that's perfectly fine in a polytheistic society. Okay, and you can worship one entity and still be worshiping two gods. You can under these type of situations. Okay, um, if it's an entity that is actually two entities, and that has been morphed into one entity. It's only one entity, but in a ethnos in an ethnic point of view, you're two entities, if you understand my meaning. Okay, now, yes, so just like, for example, does anyone know who Corellan the Raytheon is? Who his ethnic counterparts are? Yes, that's right. He's the elf god. He's the king of the elf gods. Who his counterpart might be? His counterpart is Apollo, Frey. Okay. No, and Aphrodite is not Hecate. Okay. That is not the same person. And she's Hecate is the goddess of magic. Aphrodite is not that person. In Rome, her name was Venus. Anyway, so Frey was ends up Frey's wife ends up is Aphrodite. Okay. Does anyone know her name? Who does who does Corel and the Raytheon marry? They mate, they don't marry. Okay. They were supposed to marry and it didn't work out. Okay. Because Aranchi was a lesser god. He ends up marrying Hanalei Selenil. Hanalei Selenil. Okay. He he dated Aranchi. Okay. And but because of the politics, he couldn't marry her. Okay. That's why she tried to become a greater god, and so she could marry him. If she was a greater god, then she would be allowed to marry. So she went and tried to do that. Well, she went to the Oberonth because they said that they could make her a greater god, and they did. But the price was making her into Loth or Loth, as you might, depending on who the person was. And when she did that, she was no longer a suitable wife for Corella Raytheon because now she was sadomasochistic and the elven race did not accept her. And so that's the first elven war. Civil War? Yes, first elven civil war. Anyway, okay, so um, any questions? I know that that's down. It was very fast and a little bit down and dirty, and just gave you a basic origin of Aphrodite. Um, but suffice it to say, she was the first god. Okay, but she was not sentient. Okay, until she was born out of the sea. Okay, and then she was born as a child, and then Thor or Zeus in this in the Greek terms adopted her as his daughter. her adventures began. She does repeatedly go back to Greece, and she has several children. Phobos and Deimos she has, and by Ares. She does have others. She does have others. Um, and in her other incarnations, she also has children, obviously. But you know, questions. Oh, so because she is also Ishtar, she's not only the goddess of love, she's also the goddess of war. So she's the god of love and war. Okay. So if you happen to be a cleric of Aphrodite, you have a very broad spectrum of spheres to choose from. We only have one cleric of Aphrodite that I know of, and she is Elven, so Hanalei Selenil is her patron. But that she has a very broad range because of that. And because Aphrodite is technically older than all of the other gods, she has a great deal of personal power that she can impart. Okay, above and beyond all other entities, with the exception of law and chaos itself. They're the only entities that would be older than her, be the planes of law and chaos. But as a sentient entity, to our knowledge, she would be the first ones. However, it is distinctly possible that during the birth period, before she was made sentient, that, you know, because chaos is ever changing, that that law and chaos could have sentient versions of themselves because of the creation, because of her interference, as one might say, because of her invention, because of her ability coming into being, then that spurred all other manifestations. That's why we have Eknida, and why we have who is the mother of monsters. On that note, Lilith herself is not the mother of monsters, but Lilith is the mother of Eknida, and Eknida is the mother of all monsters. So you could say that Aphrodite is the grandmother of all monsters. Although I don't think she would want to be called grandmother. It's just not her style. So I wouldn't be throwing that around. Okay? No questions. I threw all this massive, deep sub piece of information at you. Nobody's got any questions? Are you just trying to swallow this horse pill? Yes, it is. It is a boatload of information. So, okay. So I would let you all absorb that. Okay. I'll let you all absorb that. Yep. And I'm not sure what your Greek mythology teacher taught you. Okay. Because a lot of the stuff that I just talked about is not taught in class. Um, because it's deeper than most mythology classes go into. Okay. Yeah, some of them do. Okay. I had a pretty good mythology teacher. So, so some of them do, you know. But anyway, okay. So while you're all absorbing that, and maybe you can, uh, and you can always ask questions. You know, when you try to, if you want to try to build the transcripts later, you can always help, you know. And I also took mythology in college too, and many other things because I'm also archaeologist. But anyway, blah blah blah. Okay. While you guys are all absorbing that, if you come up with questions while we're still in, hey, cool. If you if you want to ask me questions later, you are more than welcome to do so. Now, while that is all bubbling and boiling in your brains, I will talk about Glassteel and the three star metals. Okay. Here is something that that your mythology teacher probably did not teach you is that the sickle that Kronos used to sever the connection between Gaia and Uranus was adamantine. Okay. So it was one of the three star metals. Okay. Now, does anyone remember which color that one is? The star metals are three different colors. They are behind me. They are the magister colors. They are the robe colors: red, black, and white. Yes, correct. Black is the correct answer. Red, black, and white are the three star colors. Okay. Adamantine is the black metal. That is the color and metal that Kronos' sickle was made out of. Okay. It is it's the most sharp, the most, the one that has the most ability to be sharpened, is the sharpest of the three. Yes. Um, the red metal, or calcum, is the hardest of them all, and it is also anti-magic. Okay. In the DC universe, for those of you that have some knowledge of that particular universe, The red metal is known as nth metal. Okay. And it it does not hold an edge. That's the problem with the red metal. But it is great for maces and hammers and armor. Okay. But it does not hold an edge. Okay. What and the the white metal is, does anybody know? Yes, it is epic. It is mithril. Okay. Now, mithril is the one of the three that can hold the most magic. Okay? So it's the most enchantable, as they say. Okay? So most mages that use that use weapons use mithril mage weapons. Most elves most elves use mithril weapons because they can hold magic better than any other weapons. They are good for demon slaying. They are they're the ones that you can put the demon slayer enchantment on or dragon slayer enchantment on, etc., etc. They are the ones designed for holding magic enchantments. Okay? All right. Those are the three star metals. There are, you can alloy those metals and you do get some nice effects. Um, but you lose the purity of the metal when you alloy. Okay, so you don't get everything. Okay, but there are several. There are several. Carbonium, rubidite, and rubidium are the alloys. Okay, and then carbonium, rubidite, and rubidium are the alloys. Okay, Malachite has the whole list. And they still do have good qualities, and some they share a measure of both parent alloys. But because they don't have the purity, they don't have everything that goes with it. Okay. Now, that's if you are a if you're a shapeshifter hunter, yeah, that's a good metal to have. You know. Yes, carbonium. That's correct. Jaluk Sinclair. That is a combination of adamantine Dwarven steel is what most dwarves use. Which is an alloy of orichalcum and steel. Okay. All right. So I also want to bring up Glassteel. Okay. Now, Glassteel is a crystal-like substance that has the properties similar to obsidian, yes, because it's a glass, correct. Uh, but it is clear, unlike obsidian, which is black. Okay. Glassteel is clear in its purest form, but it can only be located, and that's dragon glass, and that's, you can only get that from one place. To mine it, you're going to come across one of its other forms, okay? Because it is easily influenced by the metals around it, okay? I mean, you're talking about ESO or Elder Scrolls? Yes, yes. It is like the glass from Elder Scrolls. Okay. It is, yes, it is like glass from Elder Scrolls, but it's it's a step up. The Elven glass, which is one of the lower one, I mean, it's not bad or anything, but it's not top tier. But Elven glass is like the Elder Scroll ones. Okay, it can come in blue or green as its natural form. Okay, it could also come in red, black, or white if it's mined in proximity to one of the StarMetals. Okay, does that make sense? Because um, glass steel takes on the properties of the localized uh, metals. Right? So if you locate uh, a if you locate a cache of glass crystals in a copper mine, for example, it will have taken on the qualities of copper. Okay, and if you locate one in a silver mine, it will have taken on the properties of silver. Okay, that is why there are dwarven, goblin, gnome, gnomish, elven, and dragon versions. Okay. Well, in these cases, it's not prismatic, because as I said, they are copper, silver, and bronze. Okay, so it's not stain. It's the they have taken on the properties. They are the physical, visual properties. Okay, but it's more than just that. Okay? Well, prismatic, that means color. Okay. By definition, prismatic means color. So if you want to call it that, sure. Okay. But yes, they can all be stained. That's one of the things about Glassteel is it can. Oh yes, that's right. They do have a rainbow effect. Glassteel easily accepts stain. So if you have a clear, uh, you have a clear sword, okay, then when it's being built, if you want it to be red, you can add red dust and it will stain it red. That is correct. It's still going to be a clear sword, but now it's going to be a red clear sword. Okay? So yes. Is there a reason for that? Well, it's because it's glass. That's why. Sure, go ahead. Yes, Tico. If someone has the ability as a gaffer, if someone has learned to be a gaffer, they can craft items out of the shards. Okay. Wrath is a master gaffer. That's why he makes those weapons. There are not many gaffers, but those that do that have the ability to have learned to be a gaffer can make glass weapons. And the glass weapons are as powerful as metal ones. Okay? And they can be used by people who can't use metal, like druids, for example, because druids cannot use metal. Okay? That is a good example of a glass steel sword. Yep. And being that its base looks copper, then I would say that it is dwarven glass steel, unless you added the copper to it when it was crafted, because it was one of the clear ones from me. If you get a shard from me, it's going to be pure clear. And so when it's crafted, it is going to either be that or it's going to be the tint of whatever you have added to it. Okay. Whereas one of the other ones, be it dwarvish, gnomish, elvish, or goblin, it will have that uh, base tint. Yes, you are correct. You did an excellent job. It looks good. And glass steel is very enchantable, similar to mithril. Not quite the same degree, but you know, but very, but comparable. Okay. And, but it possesses the nigh but unbreakable quality of orichalcum. And so it's not exactly like any of the three. It has qualities of all three. Okay. It's not quite as sharp as adamantine, but is sharp. It's not quite as indestructible as orichalcum, but it is very tough. It is not quite as enchantable as mithril, but it is very enchantable. Does that all make sense? And yes, to little Ellie, there are no stupid questions. As I've said many, many times, the only stupid question is the one unasked. Are you asking if the white if the white elven glass is more enchantable? Yes, actually it is. It's not a stupid question. It is correct because the glass steel takes on the properties of the metal it's near. It becomes so if a you get glass steel from a mithril mine, it's going to be more enchantable. Okay, just like if you get glass steel from an adamantine mine, it's going to be sharper. All right, you get you get glass steel from an orichalcum mine, it's going to be tougher, but it's not going to be able to hold an edge either. So keep those in mind if you are doing those things. It takes on the properties of the metal that it is. Now, elven glass steel that is blue or green, that means it was found not near any other metals. Okay. That, if it was green, that means it was found in the ocean. Okay. If it was blue, then it was found in the earth. Okay. So if you find green glass steel, if someone's wearing a green glass steel like in ESO, hold on one second. Okay. Love you. See you later. Sorry, my son's going to work. They didn't wash clothes, so they had to borrow some socks. Blah blah. Sorry. All right. Anyway, um, I should say have because I'll never get it back. Okay. Now, where was I? Oh yeah. So the glass steel that you see in ESO or uh, in Elder Scrolls is green. Okay, so that means it was found in the ocean. Okay, and I'm going to since all well almost all I've seen blue in there too, that since almost all of the Glassteel in the Elder Scrolls is green, that means that their mines are under the ocean. But I have seen blue um, uh, glass in the Elder Scrolls, so there are some mines in the ground as well. Most of the Elder Scrolls glass is green, but I have seen blue. Um, yes, that is correct. So, yes. So the Elven is, that's pure and it has not been uh, mined near one of the star metals or one of the near a metal is going to come out that way. Malachite's not strong enough to make armor out of, but it is based on that. And there is blue also. Oh, it's very bizarre. Yes, but also their orichalcum in ESO is green also. What? What world are you living in? You know, what mythology were you reading when you created that? You know, smack you upside the head for not doing your own research. Anyway, yeah. No, orcs here don't use specific alloy. You know, and orichalcum is not associated with orcs at all. You know, orcs like steel. Okay, so orcs are iron elves. For those that did not know, orcs are iron elves that have been evolved or devolved, depending on what way you want to call it. You know, yes, certainly orcified. Okay, so let's see. Um, I want to also bring up the spell sword and eldritch knight um, abilities to send their power through a weapon. Okay, right, and the fact that it destroys that weapon when they send their power through it. Okay, that is across the board, unless it's Glassteel or one of the 3-star metals. Okay, of course, Valsharis. I will close this in short order. There's much to be done today, but we still got a little bit of time. All right. Now, a spell sword and a eldritch knight and you know arcane archer, they use their abilities to focus it through a weapon. Okay, so that they can use it to do certain things, like, you know, suddenly make their sword be able to cut through stone. Okay, and I'm gonna use the lightsaber visuals because it's easy for people to see it, to visualize it in their head. You know, spell swords and all three of those basically do that. Okay, but it destroys the weapon after they have done that, unless the weapon is made out of Glassteel, mithril, orichalcum, or adamantine. Arcane archer. Okay? Now, they spend a lot of time working on crafting their weapon so that they can bond with it and so it won't break. Okay. And eventually they get to that point. Okay. And so the higher level they are, then the less likely it is to break. All right. But Eldritch Knight not necessarily a demon. I mean, Eldritch Knight is a paragon. Okay, it is a combination of mage and cavalier, basically. Now there are a variety of combinations that can equal an Eldritch Knight, such as samurai, cavalier. There are a few ways to get there, but it's a basically a mage cavalier combination. Okay? Mage sword being one of the spells that they had to have learned when they were a mage. Okay? Das for for appearing to little rose. Yes, that's Eldritch Knight is a paragon. Okay? Spell sword is a hybrid class. Okay? But the Glassteel or and the three StarMetals are not destroyed by that ability. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that the alloys do not hold all the properties of the pures. This all good. I appreciate you appearing. Um, I mentioned earlier that the alloys do not hold all the properties of the pures. This is one of those cases. Okay, so a rubidite blade would not uh, hold up to a eldritch knight or spell sword's ability. It would still be destroyed. Okay. Now you may ask, Well, how does that work with a bow? Okay, arcane archer uses a bow. Well, yes, they do. Okay, and no, you cannot build a bow out of adamantine or mithril or a calcum. You can build one out of Glassteel, however. Okay, so you know, and you can lace woods with metals that will, in theory, do the job. Okay, and that's how you get around that one. But again, you're working on bonding with your weapon to slowly get to the point where you can fully bond with it. And as you go up in level, your levels, your percentiles increase that your weapon does not get destroyed because you are now successfully able to bond with that weapon. Because that is your goal, to make it so that your weapon does not get destroyed every time you pull it. Okay? Yes, they go through a lot of weapons. Yes, they do. Does does anyone have any questions on anything I've talked about today so far? I know Heather missed my entire discussion about Aphrodite, so hopefully um, someone can fill her in because I talked about a lot of deep subjects. And I know it might have gone over everybody's head. I mean, who knows? I don't know how much you absorb. I did my best to try to make it so that everyone understood what I was talking about, but I am an imperfect machine, you know. It's like, you know, and Trini just asked me about the elven part about Aphrodite. Well, I will go ahead and mention that. In elven lore, she is analyzed Seleno. Okay, she is also Elistray. Right? Analyzed Seleno. Does anybody have that to pull up for her? Okay, she's also Elistray. So she's not. Elstray is not actually Lost Daughter. She is just, yes, exactly, for Dark Elves. Elstray is not actually Lost Daughter. Loth, like Zeus, Loth recognized uh, that Aphrodite was way too powerful to just not be, to just run around on her own. So she adopted her as her daughter and took control of her by doing so. Now, Aphrodite is fairly fairly lawful, okay, but she still does what she wants, okay. She follows the rules, but she still does what she wants, okay. Does that make sense? Yes, you would think that she would be chaos, but she is not, okay. Now, emotions are also chaotic, right? Okay, and so she is that, okay, but she also knows, okay, remember, she was born out of chaos, okay, she was born out of chaos, but she was born because chaos and law mated, were able to interact, okay. So as much as she was born out of chaos, she has once she was actually physically born, then and was able to get a physical body and get understand that gravity and time and all the laws that interact with the universe are necessary in order to create progress and forward cohesion, then she decided that law was necessary. Okay. So even though she was crafted from chaos, she decided that law was necessary. So she follows the laws, even though she has, you know, she was born of chaos. Does that make sense? That is why she chose to become, when she was told she was going to get married to Hephaestus, she did. You know, she didn't, you know, lash out and say, no, yeah, I don't have to do that. You know, she didn't rebel. She said, okay, I don't love this guy. I I think I like that guy over there. she, you know, she didn't, but she kept coming back, right? She kept coming back. She didn't leave him. She took vacations. Okay, she ran off and, she ran off, became Ishtar, and came back and said, "Hey, you know what? You're my husband, right? Okay, cool." And then she ran off and became Lilith, and and then and that's right, exactly. She had children with Aries and all these other things. It's she kept coming back because exactly. She's Ishtar also. She's kept coming back because that's the law, you know. That's her husband. That's who she's supposed to live with, and so that's what she does. But it does not mean she doesn't have to take. She can't take vacations. Say, and you know what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, right? That's what she says. You know. So that allows off for your attendance, Jaluk Rose. So you're starting to get the picture on who Aphrodite is, right? She's not a villain. She's definitely a good guy, but she's, you know, not somebody you want to be married to unless you're okay with that kind of thing. Hey, know, but Festus is like, I'm never gonna. She's the most beautiful woman in the world. I'm never gonna get divorced from her. That's correct. You know, yep. And each of her ethnic nomenclatures, she has, you know, different, you know, she's different skill sets because she learned more stuff in each of those places. Okay. But Aphrodite is Lilith. She is Ishtar. She is Inanna. Okay. She is all these same people. Okay. She is Hanalei Seleno. Okay. You want to figure out who she is in Celtic lore, Norse lore? She is in every one of them. Okay. And she doesn't necessarily in each one poke her head to the top because she doesn't necessarily need to. Okay. She plays her role. She is still lawful. Okay. Does that all make sense? Is it making sense who she is? Dun, 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 dun. Because you know, people just look at Aphrodite and most people just think this, hey, she's a blonde bimbo. No, nothing could be farther from the truth. If you think that, then you are very superficial. Hey, and if that's cool, if that's who you want to be superficial, more power to you. Don't change the truth. But hey, it's all good, right? She is not, you know, as superficial as she may come across, she is definitely not superficial. And that's one of the reasons why I linked that Hercules version of her, Alexandra Tidings. I thought that was a excellent rendition of her because it makes people it makes people think that she's this very superficial blonde bimbette. But then if you pay attention, she was pretending. Yes, see, there you go. She was making people, she wanted people to think that about her, but it wasn't true. Okay? Because when when people think that you are stupid, they underestimate you. Okay? And everybody underestimates Aphrodite because she's really the oldest of all the gods. Okay? But she didn't when when she showed up at the Olympians, she didn't demand that that they that they hail her as an elder or nothing like that. She's like, all right, cool. You know, I'll play along. I'll be your daughter. You know, I'm good with that. You want me to do this? Hecate is the goddess of childbirth, and yeah, she's definitely Greek. But I'm not sure if she was there at the first meeting because there was only 12 at the first meeting. She did meet her, obviously. Okay, but it's possible. It, it's not out of the realm of possibility. You know. Anyway, um, but you get me where I'm going with this. Okay, she could have said, "Hey, you know what? I'm older than all of you guys. Why are you saying this stuff? You know, I'm I'm older than the Titans who are your parents." She didn't say any of that. Okay, she didn't do that. She's like, "All right, cool. I'm good with that. You want me to play the daughter role? I'm good with it. I'll figure out what that is. I don't know what it is because she's newborn. She's totally, yeah. There you go. That was funny. But technically, she's older than their grandmother. You know, she didn't play that card. Okay. Poseidon goes, "You came out of the sea. Are you a sea now?" She didn't. She didn't do that. You know, she didn't play that card either. Because all the guys are fighting over, or would have fought over. Okay, here. This is a really important fact that I want to go. That since I'm on it, I'm going to say something. So I have harped many, many, many times about Zeus. Okay, because modern mythology makes him this playboy that goes around and has sex with everything that walks on the ground. And I have told you many times that that's not really how mythology is. That's how modern perceptions of it is because he had so many kids. But they leave out the fact that the reason he had so many kids is because he had a deal with Hera, who was barren, okay, to have for her to have a child, okay? And so he had to possess, or she had to possess women in order for her to have a child because her body couldn't do it. Okay. So she just kept having to possess other women. They started with more powerful women. They started with the Titans. Okay. Because, power, right? Okay. But unfortunately, that didn't work out because the power of the body was more powerful the than what Hera could give, and so they ended up being the children of that particular individual. And then the Titans didn't work out, so he went through the gods. All right. And then other beings, nymphs, and then eventually he got down to the humans. That's when when Hera finally got a child, Heracles, the gift of Hera. That's when she finally got her child. Okay. And that's when Zeus stopped doing that. When Hera finally got her child, then then that he stopped having sex with all these women because that was the whole goal. That was the goal of this thing. And the story of Aphrodite really brings that home because if he really was this philandering fool, like modern mythology paints him to be, then the very first person who would be in line to try to get into Aphrodite's pants would have been Zeus. Okay? But that's not the case because that wasn't the goal. He already knew this woman is too powerful. Her body is going to be too powerful to give Hera a child. So there's no point in making that attempt. I already know that. He's smart enough to already know that her body is going to be too powerful to do that. So what's the point? You know, I'll just but I don't want her to start a war, so I'm going to make her my daughter. Okay, does that all make sense, people? Okay, I know that modern society paints a different picture. Okay, that everyone wants to look at ancient mythology from modern perspective, and they don't realize that that's not how it is. Just because you think it, just because you want to impose your concepts onto mythology doesn't make it the way it was. Okay? Sorry, I know I harp on that one, but it's an important distinction that those of us who actually have studied archaeology um, can make, and it's rare that you're going to hear that from anyone, even history teachers, because you know they they tell you what's obvious. Some of them, usually college teachers, not high school teachers. Some college professors will tell you because they have done their own research. All right. I've been fortunate to have some pretty good college professors, you know, and I have done my own research. Blah 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 blah. Okay. That's right. Exactly what I'm saying. Yep. What people what people see now is not what was done then. Okay. It's people's perception of reality. Okay. My apologies. Any questions on anything I've discussed today? Whether I've whether it be Aphrodite, or the StarMetals, or Glassteel. Yeah. I know you're probably still chewing on the Aphrodite stuff. So, but I'm in Discord if you have questions. Otherwise, then I will see you in 2 weeks at the battle. Let's see. This battle is a meteor one, right? Okay. All right. So that and the Fomorians have not given up yet, although they are seriously demoralized. They have not given up because the hole in the sky has not been closed and their territory is still melting. Okay. You know, it's you can't go back to normal when the normal is now water instead of ice. Okay. I'll douse for your attention. Then douse for now.